Making news now. We talked to a health professional about a serious diagnosis on campus.
Because it has what we call a high mortality rate.
President Trump reveals his tax code plans, and the White House isn't pleased with an appellate court's ruling. Live from Southern Illinois University, this is River Region Evening Edition.
St. Louis fire officials are investigating an explosion that destroyed a vacant house this morning. Good evening, I'm Zach Barrett.
And I'm Diamond Hayes. Debris from the explosion landed on neighbors' roofs and led officials to evacuate the neighborhood. A natural gas explosion is suspected, but no one was injured.
In Madison County, a judge convicted a 19-year-old man in the murder of an 11-year-old boy. Prosecutors say that Timon Ford was convicted on Tuesday after a bench trial of the shooting of Ronell Jones. Jones died at the hospital, according to prosecutors, after he was shot in the back outside of an Alton Youth Center. The state's attorney believes that Ford was confronting individuals after an ongoing social media argument. Ford fired a 9mm handgun from a car before he fled the scene back in January.
According to St. Louis authorities, an 85-year-old woman was found dead in a fire. The fire was at North St. Louis Retirement Facility and is currently under investigation. Police say that the fire was reported last night at Bethesda Village North Retirement Community and did not spread beyond the second floor. The woman's name has not been released and her death is under investigation. So it was really beautiful this morning, but not so much this afternoon.
Yeah, the rain was coming in. We even had some warnings. Devin Flickinger is here now to tell us if those warnings are still in effect.
You know, that's right. Tonight's going to be 68 degrees and still scattered storms, and then the morning is going to be 51 degrees. And by midday, it'll be 58 degrees. You do see, everything you see in pink is currently under severe thunderstorm warning until 5:37 p.m., so a little bit after today's show. That's Washington, Jefferson, and Perry counties. Watch means that you do see the storm. Well, you don't see the storms. There are, it's favorable or expected, but you don't see it, so that'll be a warning. I'll have more for you up later in my forecast.
Thanks, Devin. A disease that broke out in the 1990s showed up on SIU's campus this week.
Yeah, and a student has been diagnosed with meningitis, worrying many students and faculty about the possibility of infection. River Region Sydney Kessler spoke with health officials.
10 to 15% of people that have it can still die from the infection, so it's very serious.
Okay. Meningitis is a serious illness.
Today, health officials are on high alert after an SIU student was diagnosed with meningitis, sending him to the hospital.
Anyone who's had direct contact with the student has been directly contacted and is being offered antibiotics.
But for those who don't know if they've been exposed, symptoms can be easily spotted.
The most common symptoms of meningitis would be headache, fever, and stiff neck.
It can be potentially lead to permanent harm or death within 24 hours. That's the seriousness.
So I just want you to relax. Does that cause any problems? Mm-mm. Now, if you had meningitis, you would not let me do that.
Right.
Like hold it really stiff. Mm-hmm. Like don't even let me. Yeah. See, that's how it would be. You wouldn't even, it would hurt so much. You wouldn't even let me bring it up, okay. Or your whole body would come up like this.
Those symptoms are to be taken seriously, and students should either go to the student health center, or if the student health center is not open, they should go to an emergency department.
Students between the ages of 16 and 22 coming onto campus are required to get the meningitis vaccination, something health officials say are the #1 line of defense. But before symptoms begin to show, antibiotics can stop the disease in its tracks. And all you need is a simple checkup to make sure you're in the clear.
Does that cause any pain in your head or back?
No.
All right. If you had meningitis, you would resist that, or again, you would bring your neck up to take some of the pressure off.
Okay.
So
well, that's
you're
good.
Fine. You don't seem to have meningitis.
Yeah, I checked out today. That's good.
For River Region Evening Edition, I'm Cindy Kessler.
Again, the common symptoms include headache, fever, and an extremely stiff neck. If you believe that you were exposed to someone with meningitis, you must contact your local health officials immediately.
An Illinois Retirement Board has voted to strip former U.S. Speaker of the House and Illinois General Assembly member Dennis Hastert of his state pension. Hastert collected $28,000 a year from the state, but he will keep his federal pension, which is worth more than $73,000 a year. Hastert is serving a 15-month prison term, and his attorneys did not immediately respond for comment. He was convicted of federal bank violations and a hush money scheme that has unearthed sexual misconduct against underage boys.
President Donald Trump is promising the biggest revision in the country's tax code in more than a century. But there is already opposition, and some of it comes from Trump's own party.
With just 3 days to go before President Donald Trump hits the 100-day mark, the White House is going big on one of his major campaign promises.
Under the Trump plan, we will have a massive tax cut for businesses and massive tax reform and simplification.
Secretary Steven Mnuchin and National Economic Director Gary Cohn laid out Trump's vision for tax policy. Reducing the corporate tax rate from 35% to 15% would be the biggest tax cut in U.S. history, Mnuchin claims. The White House also wants tax relief for middle-income families, an end to the alternative minimum tax, and a simplified tax code.
By taking the current 7 tax brackets we have today and reducing them to only 3 brackets. A 10% bracket, a 25% bracket, and a 35% bracket.
But Democrats and some deficit hawks appear to be united in their opposition, questioning how the country will pay its bills.
That's just a tax giveaway to the very, very wealthy that will explode the deficit.
Speaker Paul Ryan, who would be tasked with getting the votes to pass any tax cuts, says he's been briefed on the details. But a senior GOP source tells CNN the administration has not yet explained how these cuts would be paid for. The initial draft comes as leaders in Congress continue to negotiate over a deal to fund the government, which runs out of money at the end of Friday. In Washington, I'm Stacey Cohan.
Coming up, the White House is less than thrilled with a ruling from an appellate court.
And today marks the 31st anniversary of what some consider the worst nuclear accident in history. River Region Evening Edition is back in 90 seconds. The White House is blasting the ruling of the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals after it ruled against President Trump's executive action of stripping federal funding for sanctuary cities. Judge William Orrick ruled against President Trump's plan to strip the cities of funding using Trump's own words.
I don't want to defund anybody. I want to give them the money they need to properly operate as a city or a state. If they're going to have sanctuary cities, we may have to do that. Certainly that would be a weapon.
President Trump took to Twitter to lash out against the ruling, while others in a statement from the White House called it an egregious overreach of a single unelected district judge.
The U.S. Air Force launched an unarmed intercontinental ballistic missile earlier today. According to a statement provided by the Department of Defense, the missile was equipped with a test reentry vehicle and traveled approximately 4,200 miles before landing in a test range near the Marshall Islands. The launch comes as tensions continue to rise between the U.S. and North Korea.
And with tensions rising on the Korean Peninsula, the South Korean government announced the deployment of key parts of a new missile defense program. The Terminal High Altitude Area Defense, or THAAD, system is designed to protect an area from incoming missile fire. However, some countries, including Russia and China, say that the radar for the system can be used to illegally spy into their territory.
Amid speaking out against U.S. military technology, China launched its first domestically built aircraft carrier. The carrier, which does not yet have a name, was launched just days after China celebrated the 68th anniversary of the founding of the country's Navy. The ship could help China in its continuing efforts to establish control over the South China Sea, but it is not expected to enter service until sometime in 2020.
And with the rising tensions over the Korean Peninsula, the U.S. is also worried about the increased tension with Iran. This occurs after a U.S. Navy vessel called the USS Mahan, traveling in the Persian Gulf, was forced to fire a warning flare toward an incoming Iranian vessel. The vessel came within 1,100 yards of the Mahan before turning and sailing away.
President Trump has also turned his sights on Canada. The issue, the North American Free Trade Agreement.
Businesses and consumers facing a dairy crisis in Wisconsin.
It's tricky because it needs space, it needs a cooler, and it's very, very perishable.
Some dairy farmers may have to pour out unsold milk. This following an expanded Canadian tariff on ultra-filtered milk imports from the U.S., which lowered prices for milk produced in Canada. Wisconsin's dairy crisis is part of a larger issue amid trade tensions between Canada and the United States. President Trump hitting Canada over dairy on Twitter and sounding off on the issue Tuesday.
People don't realize Canada has been very rough on the United States. Everyone thinks of Canada as being wonderful, and so do I. I love Canada. but they've outsmarted our politicians for many years.
When Canadian officials wouldn't bend on dairy tariffs, the president responded by slapping tariffs of up to 24% on Canadian lumber. The administration charging that Canada's government subsidizes Canadian lumber companies. Canada's Foreign Minister Chrystia Freeland denying the claim and echoing concerns that the tax will lead to higher home prices in the U.S.
This is going to cost middle-class Americans who want to buy a house a lot of money.
Freeland making it clear that Canada has no intention of backing down when it comes to trade disputes with the U.S.
Politeness is something that we believe is a national virtue. But it's not an accident that hockey is our national sport.
I'm Reed Binion reporting.
Trump is still considering an executive order that would declare the U.S. wants out of NAFTA, but that action could trigger a renegotiation of the agreement instead of an outright withdrawal.
Today marks the 31st anniversary of the accident at the Chernobyl nuclear power station. The accident, which occurred in one of the 4 nuclear reactors located at the power station, caused a steam explosion, which then destroyed both the reactor and the contaminant building surrounding it. The presidents of Belarus and Ukraine paid tribute to the cleanup crews who arrived shortly after the explosion in order to contain the damage.
Despite the rising tensions all over the world, one man is calling on the world to help. Pope Francis gave a surprise TED Talk at the TED Talk 2017 conference, which was held on Tuesday. In his speech, Pope Francis said that the world needs what he calls a revolution in tenderness. He then urged people to show solidarity with one another, as well as calling on world leaders to act with humility.
After 13 years of science and discovery, NASA says that the Cassini aircraft is ready for its final mission. The spacecraft is set to begin a series of 22 dives between the planet and its rings over the next few months. During the dive, scientists expect to gather data that could help determine a number of unknowns about Saturn, including the age of its rings and the length of its day. The mission will end in September with what NASA is calling the grand finale, which will see the spacecraft dive into the atmosphere of Saturn before being destroyed.
Severe weather watches are currently underway here in the River region. Devin Flickinger is next with more.
And the Dow, S&P, and NASDAQ all finished down today. Learn more on that on the Nightly Business Report following us at 5:30.
Devin Flickinger is back to let you know what to expect this weekend.
And Uber is starting to look like the Jetsons. I'll explain next.
Tomorrow is our last newscast of the semester, and it's SIUC Sports View. The SIUC tennis team gears up for their last tournament ever. The men's basketball team is giving back to the community, and we'll have the chance to talk to a record-breaking women's golfer. Join us tomorrow at 5 p.m. for our award-winning sports magazine show, SIUC Sports View.
Uber is bringing a new angle to ride sharing, and it's looking a lot like the Jetsons. Uber plans to bring flying taxis to Dallas and Dubai by 2020. Uber is partnering with aviation companies to develop the flying vehicles. The technology is brand new and still unproven, but Uber says flight is the future of its business. The rideshare giant also said that cars will help with busy areas and busy traffic, and the fare will be the same price as an Uber X. So, I mean,
No.
that's, you wouldn't do it?
No.
You wouldn't do it? I
Not
would
at all.
love to be flying
Me
around Dubai
Me
in
too.
a flying Uber.
Dubai, maybe. Carbondale, Illinois. Like, what if that just took off and that was the thing, flying cars?
I mean, I think that would be great.
It sounds so fun.
Does
I
it?
hate flying.
Yeah,
It
okay.
scares me. And on a day like today, when it's all rainy and gross, like,
Right.
scary, right?
It could be, yes.
Do you want to tell us a little bit about the weekend?
I will. Friday, we are going to be
We
expecting.
were under a watch earlier. We still possibly are under that watch as that
Correct.
rain seems to still be falling.
Yeah, as of right now, at 5:37, that watch is going to go away. Jackson County, Union County are still under that watch. But yeah, so that rain is still going to hit us. That high pressure system's moving its way towards us, bringing that rain.
Yeah. So looking forward to next week, definitely. It looks like it's going to be a lot prettier then.
It'll be clearer, yeah.
But our weekend rain could be affecting our Dallas Baptist game,
True.
the softball games.
Yeah, it's gonna be a lot. So everybody just needs to look at SIUCLucas.com for the current update a bit on the weather.
Okay, awesome, Michael.
True.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And thank you for joining us tonight. Follow us on Facebook and Twitter at River Region News. Our webpage is riverregion.wordpress.com. I'm Zach Barrett.
And I'm Diamond Hayes. For Devin Flickinger, Michael Nelson, and all the students who work on Evening Edition, good night.